drunk. Do you serve him? We sent men acting drunk and wearing hidden cameras into 15 bars to see if they'd be served. What we learned is both surprising and disturbing. It was just a test, and no one was harmed. But every day and every night, bartenders face the same challenge, and too often their decisions can lead to tragedy. Dan and Marge Towery paid the ultimate price for a bartender's carelessness. When they watched the surveillance tape of a man drinking at a bar, they see a senseless and fatal countdown. For you see, the man seen here drinking later got behind the wheel of his truck and slammed into a car carrying the Towery's daughter, Sarah, and her boyfriend, Chip Smith.
As I watched it, it was, okay, here's the first drink. Sarah and Chip have 2 hours and 40 minutes to live.
It's all captured there on videotape. Jeffrey Trout, a 39-year-old contractor, taking drink after drink. In all, police say, 18 shots of rum. He then stumbles out of the bar. Minutes later, a fatal wreck that takes 3 lives.
Some people will call it an accident. What do you call it?
I call it a crash, and I call it murder.
It was about 2:45 in the afternoon. Dan and Margie Towery were driving down this road, headed for an afternoon of hiking. Their daughter Sarah and her boyfriend Chip were following behind them in another car. Suddenly, the Towerys noticed that barreling toward them came a pickup truck, veering out of control. The driver was speeding, talking on his cell phone, and drunk.
So I was pulling over to stop because I figured, there was going to be a crash there.
Dan Towery will never forget the wrenching scene he witnessed through his rearview mirror as his daughter and her boyfriend, both in their 20s, were crushed to death.
It was probably the most helpless feeling I've ever had to see Sarah and Chip trapped in the vehicle. Couldn't do anything. Told them that we loved them.
The Towerys wanted justice, but police told them that since the drunk driver was dead, there was no one to go after. Still, the Towerys would not give up. They retraced the killer's final hours and discovered that he had been drinking at a lounge called The Mirage. It was the bar's surveillance videotape that gave them the proof they were looking for. Police say it shows that within 2.5 hours, Jeffrey Trout was served the equivalent of an entire bottle of rum. The bartender is facing charges of criminal recklessness, which he denies. The Mirage paid a $500,000 settlement to the victims' families, and the state refused to renew its liquor license. It's as simple as this. Bartenders are forbidden to serve anyone who is obviously drunk. It's a law that's been on the books in many states since the birth of the nation. A law well known to bar owners, but very difficult to enforce. In a recent study by the University of Minnesota, 79% of bars tested served people who appeared intoxicated. Is that really possible? Do bartenders continue serving people despite the obvious risks? Well, to find out, we went undercover.
You're going to then approach the bar.
With the help of the University of Minnesota, we conducted a similar experiment.
You're going to giggle inappropriately.
Their researcher worked with our experts to train 2 volunteers in the art of acting drunk.
What kind of deal do you have?
Mark Sherman is a substance abuse counselor.
My name is David Harwitz.
Dr. David Harwitz is chief resident of psychiatry at a New York City hospital.
They're spritzed with whiskey before they go in, so they smell of alcohol.
Dr. Alex Wagoner of the University of Minnesota describes how decoys are trained in the art of acting drunk.
They stumble a little bit, they're unsteady on their feet. When they come in, they tend to drop things.
Night after night, Mark and David swayed and stumbled their way into bars and liquor stores with the cameras rolling.
How you doing?
Some bartenders refused to serve them.
I can't serve you guys. Sorry. Why? I stumbled in. I can't serve you.
The clerk at this liquor store also refused to sail for a good reason.
Hey, you rock like that, I can't sell it to you. No, I can't do it.
But that was the exception. Most of the time, our decoys had no problem getting served at least one drink. Even at national chains like Bennigan's and TGI Fridays, even though here he was cut off after one drink. We sampled 15 establishments instructing our decoys to make sure the bartenders got a good look at them. Still, 75% of the time, they were served at least once. Our investigators didn't actually drink the alcohol. They went to the bathroom and poured the drinks down the drain. But in the opinion of our experts, if Mark and David had really been intoxicated, these businesses would have been in violation of state laws. We also went undercover in the state of North Carolina to a bar called Mulligan's on the Outer Banks. We didn't pick the place at random. It was an incident at this very same bar that just a year ago set the stage for the worst traffic accident in the history of the small beach community.
I'm so sorry. I never intended to hurt anyone.
Melissa Marvin is a 29-year-old waitress whose taste for alcohol has destroyed 4 families and affected countless others. According to a police report, on April 6, 1999, Marvin drank 2 jumbo margaritas at another beach bar and then drove here to Mulligan's, where Officer Wesley Liverman says she had 3 glasses of 100 proof liquor.
Bartender told me that she seemed tipsy and that when she left, she told her that she didn't need to be driving, said, "Let me call you a cab." The bartender told me this. And she left anyway.
The bartender should have insisted. She also could have called police, but she didn't. Instead, Melissa Marvin was allowed to get into her car in no condition to drive. She ran a red light at this intersection at 60 miles an hour and slammed straight into a car carrying 5 high school seniors on Easter vacation. Officer Liverman was on patrol that afternoon and saw the whole thing.
And when the vehicles collided, it looked like an explosion. Every window in that Cavalier just went out.
The scene was so horrible that even experienced rescue workers were overcome with despair. 4 of the 5 teenagers in the car were killed. Angela McGrady, Megan Blonde, Amanda Guyton, and Shayna Long. Each one of them just 17 years old. The 5th passenger, Michael Horner, survived with massive injuries. A year after the accident, the victim's parents are still in shock.
How in the world did the parents get over this?
I don't think you ever get over this. I think you try to learn from it.
The parents have formed an organization called Precious Gems in memory of their daughters. It's a group committed to enlighten not just drivers, but also bartenders.
I'm hoping that perhaps this crash will call some attention to the accountability that bars have for their actions.
Bartenders will tell you, look, we can't control these people. We don't know if they're really drunk. It's not my job.
Well, it's their job to push the alcohol, so that seems to be their primary focus. Look what one drunk driver did. One drunk driver killed 4 teenage girls. One drunk driver injured my son. One drunk driver affected 10 families.
And so we decided to go back to Mulligan's, the last bar that served Melissa Marvin before the car wreck that killed those 4 young girls. When David walks in wearing a hidden camera, he's acting sober. But then he served 6 straight shots of vodka in just 1 hour, enough to put most people over the legal limit. Excellent. I sat there and watched the whole thing. David was then allowed to walk to the parking lot and drive away. Our experts say whether he was acting drunk or not, there's no way he should have been served that much alcohol that quickly. And so we decided it was time to go back inside and ask the bartender why he allowed that.
I would like to ask you why you served this man 6 drinks within the span of 1 hour, sir. Then you allowed him to drive home. Can I come in?
What does that tell you? That tells you that they haven't learned any lesson for accountability for their actions yet, have they?
Victims' families can pretty much rely on the fact that they're not going to have any friends in the bar or restaurant.
Ronald Beitman is a Massachusetts attorney who's filed several lawsuits against liquor establishments in drunk driving cases.
No bartender, waitress, manager, or owner is going to testify against their own interests. And that's what makes these cases so difficult to prosecute and win.
We showed him one of our test samples in which Mark staggers into a New York liquor store to buy a pint of vodka.
You want that guy picking through the shelves of bottles?
The clerk walks to the shelf and gets the bottle for him.
The issue here isn't whether the clerk recognizes the signs of intoxication. What did the clerk do after he recognized the symptoms? What about the damage to the people that are outside on the street that may be facing this guy down the road?
We showed the same scene to Scott Wetzler, spokesman for the New York State liquor industry, and even he had problems with it.
Why did he sell him the vodka? Because he was completely irresponsible and either doesn't understand or chooses not to take his responsibility very seriously.
How responsible would you say most tavern owners and bartenders are?
The members of our association are generally responsible. I think it's but a few that are the scurrilous ones who don't care at all about society and only care about profit.
It's not a case of a few bad apples. It's really 3/4 of the bushel. It's clear that the majority, the great majority of establishments are not following the law.
So how do you stop bartenders from serving customers who are already drunk?
What is alcohol? Sherry, is it a drug?
One solution may be found here in Massachusetts, an intervention program taught by former bartender Mike Marcantonio. He teaches other bartenders how to say no more.
I would say to him, sir, I can't serve you any alcohol right now. I'll be glad to get you a soda or coffee. And why don't I call somebody to come pick you up, get you a cab. But if you choose to get back in your car and drive down, you leave me no choice but to call the police, and I don't want to do that. What do you want me to do?
Officer Liberman, who watched those 4 teenage girls die last year, has to cross the same intersection every day. He says the horror of what he saw will never leave him. Sometimes at night, at the memorial set up by the victims' families, he sees a young girl kneeling and crying.
I see Shayna's sister out here at night. I think she's having a hard time dealing with it. I know I would myself. It's heartbreaking, it really is, to see them.
Melissa Marvin was convicted of second-degree murder for the death of those 4 teenagers. She was sentenced to 60 years in prison and is now appealing. But there's little sympathy for Melissa from these parents who, in memory of their precious gems, are determined to wage war, not only against those who get drunk and then hit the road, but also against liquor stores and bar owners who serve them.
They are selling a drug. They are selling a drug and letting people just go up in their cart. They have to be responsible.
Well, you can really see, I really don't have to come back and talk about that video, do I? Does it have a clear, strong message?